Chris Garth said this has been a long process here, a couple of years, been watching Raúl. Can you take us a little bit through that process and how it evolved into signing him here today?
Yeah, it has been a long process. We start to narrow down a list of guys. We keep a depth chart at each position, but as injuries come with Jordan, then you highlight that position and you start to really focus in and narrow down the list. And we've had time. It's watching the player live, interviewing the player, trying to gather as much information as we can, and then credit to all the scouting staff for all the hours they put in that doesn't really get seen between Sean and Piort and Augustine. The work they do behind the scenes, you really have to credit them for gathering all the info.
And in those interviews, what specifically stood out in those interviews that you heard from him that made you say, he's the guy, we want him?
I think usually the motivation of the player. What's your reason for coming to Seattle and playing in MLS? And he checked all the boxes, and obviously his playing record speaks for itself, and I think he's going to translate really well to our league.
In the process of watching him play, well, A, when was the first time you saw him specifically, and then B, what was the moment that you saw in any of his games that you mentioned he would be the right fit with the guys that you have here?
I mean, we've seen him 3 years ago. We watched him, and he was one of those players that we continued to follow that was intriguing. And as it started to narrow down into the last 6 months, we started to really focus on our trips and making sure we were efficient in the way we watched them and the information we gathered.
Was there a game throughout the last couple months then that you went down and saw him play that you thought he played well enough to convince you that he was the right fit?
Yeah, the game when Peru played New Zealand, they had the home and away series. Had an opportunity to spend time there, watch him train. I got kicked out of one of the trainings by the coach, but I understand they're getting ready with their tactics for the game, so that's normal. But I saw enough of training to get a good feeling.
What's your personal level of excitement with this signings compared to, say, Clint, Nico, Ova? How's this one compare in your mind?
I'm always excited when we add a player to the team that we put in a lot of work, but Raúl's a guy who's been a leading scorer in a great league in Mexico just recently. Played for his country in the World Cup. So whenever you sign a player of that caliber, it's very exciting for the club. As a former player, I know that when there was a good player coming in, it was a spark for me as a player. I wanted to connect with him, show him that I'm a good player, and so I think it's a boost for the whole group.
You obviously have inputs coming in from a lot of multiple scouts, from data, from coaches. Was there a level of consensus on Ruidíaz, and maybe was he the guy that everyone seemed to agree was the one to go after?
I think we've always tried to do things collectively and collaboratively at our club, and especially in key decisions. So having the coaching staff, we had already spent hundreds of hours with the scouting staff, and we brought it to a certain point that we presented the coaches, and we did have consensus among the whole group. Everyone thought he was a fantastic player, and then it's the work that Garth gets done, getting it over the finish line. So I feel like it was a collective effort, and we're happy he's here, and let's talk in a year and see how things are playing out.
How was the process by signing him with Morelia? Was it hard? Was it easy?
Yeah, we had some assistants. The agent we've worked with before, Alejandro, flew there, had a couple meetings. It took some weeks to get that done, but they were a great club to work with, and we hope we can have future collaboration with them.
How does Raúl fit into the formation and the roster in general?
I think Raúl can play multiple positions for our team, and especially in the way we have our setup now. He could play as the high player in the 9. He can play underneath in the band of 3. If we change our formation, he could be fantastic as 2 up front. So, I think some of these decisions you think about, Jordan Morris is going to come back for us, and the way he plays and which player can complement that.
Chris, it's halfway through in terms of the administrative process, his residency. What is that process now that he's got to get his status?
When a player comes, you work through with the immigration lawyer, you work through the P1 visa, and hopefully that goes smoothly, and we can get him, know, from when he's available on the 10th, he's available to play hopefully the next game. So, you know, that part, you just want to make sure the appointments are all set up and he shows up, and, you know, we take it one step at a time, and then it's getting his family here, getting them settled. We have a great group of people helping with the onboarding and getting players settled, so when they get here they can focus on playing games and helping us win.
Does he have a roommate now, just staying by himself, not to get personal, you know, just from a team perspective?
Yeah, he's here. He's at a hotel here. Okay. And he has a representative who's with him, who's helping him get settled as well.
So what's next, Chris? Scott has talked about bringing in at least another player. What kind of a guy can we expect to see in terms of maybe attack, defend, or just what you would like to see this club at now, from what you've been working on?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like us to be able to add another player who's considered to start every game. So, you know, that it's a TAM level player. We've narrowed it down to a list of guys, and we've spent the same hundreds of hours watching these guys and narrowing down the list, and I think the consensus is there on one or two guys, and then now it's down to whether we can get the negotiations done or not.